Welcome to the Word for the Week, brought to you by Living Hope Christian Fellowship. We're planning to produce content up until the end of 2021. This week, Debbie is going to be talking about digging deep.
The other day, I was reading Luke 6 and I noticed something I hadn't seen before. I was reading the parable of the wise man building his house on the rock. I must have read or heard this parable hundreds of times from childhood onwards. Here it is. As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they are like. They are like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid the foundation on rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house, but could not shake it, because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed, and its destruction was complete. That's Luke 6. There are loads of children's picture books and short videos on YouTube which portray this story. And most of the ones I've seen illustrate this parable with a picture of one man building his house on an enormous chunk of rock. A bit bleak, but in the end it proves a wise decision. And then the other guy builds his house somewhere on the beach. Lovely view, but as we know, that doesn't end well. But when I was reading this story recently, it struck me that that is not actually what Jesus is saying here. These two men were building in the same place. In fact, their houses could have been in the same street. They could have been next door neighbours. But one house stood and the other collapsed. So, what made the difference? Jesus tells us that one of these guys chose to dig deep. He saw that the surface was sandy and he knew that wouldn't be good enough to sustain the building. So, he began to dig. And he kept on digging until he found some rock, some solid ground. Builder number 2, on the other hand, wanted his building up fast. No messing around digging foundations. No one sees foundations, so why worry about that? It's the visible bit that matters. So up goes the building in double quick time. Except that what you can't see does matter. It really matters. And so the building that has gone up slowly with lots of careful digging survives the storm. Whereas the building that started from ground level is totally destroyed. Do you ever feel like you're living out of the surface of life? When I change the water in my ducks' little pool, they absolutely love it. They go crazy in the clean, fresh water. They spend ages flapping their wings and splashing about. It makes all the labour of emptying and refilling the pool worthwhile just to stand and watch them having a good time. But there's another thing they like to do. And unfortunately, there's not much room in their little pool for them to do this. But they love to dive under the water in one corner of the pool and resurface on the opposite side. They like to dive beneath the surface and be surrounded on every side by the cool, clean water and then rise up again into the air. We can spend a lot of our time splashing around in the surface water. It can be because we're having a good time, enjoying a bit of fun. Or it can be because we're panicking, hyperactive, anxious about many things, as Jesus said to Martha. God understands that we sometimes end up in that place. Quite frequently, if my own experience is anything to go by. But splashing in the shallows is no place to live your life. Our Heavenly Father is calling us out of that top layer of existence to plunge down deep into the depths where He is. Jesus said that the man who digs deep is the one who does two things: hears and does. So finding that firm, rocky foundation in our life is first of all about hearing. We dig down past all the surface sand, the stuff that when we try to grab it so easily runs through our fingers. You know what it is in your life, and I know what it is in mine. We willfully choose to shovel it out of the way until we reach that rock, God's love, His truth, and the power of His Spirit at work within us. And then it is about doing. Resting in God's loving presence, He shows us new ways of looking at things, new priorities, new desires for the things which last forever. He shows us how we can forgive, share and serve. And then we begin to build. In His grace we begin to do the things we've heard from Him. And from this solid foundation the building is so much easier, because what lies beneath is not going to shift or blow away. Imagine that poor misguided man trying to build on the sand. Even as he lays one brick upon another, he's aware of the fundamental instability of what he's building. He can feel the slippage. He can see the movement. But somehow he manages to hold it all together, wedge the bricks in place, slap on a bit of mortar, and at the end he can stand back and try to convince himself that he's built a fine house in double quick time. Until the torrent strikes. I feel in my own life the last couple of years have been a constantly reiterated call from God to dig deep. We've all witnessed a fair few collapses, and we know how much personal pain and heartache is involved in each devastation of our hopes and plans. But there's God's patient mercy in these goings on. I like to think perhaps the foolish man, after spending a while lamenting over his loss, may have picked himself up, spent a while observing his neighbour's house and learning a thing or two, and then perhaps he grabbed his tools once more and began his work all over again. This time, starting off by digging deep. Bless you all. Have a great week finding that foundation.